The morning had started like any other at the billionaire's grand mansion. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, painting golden patterns on the marble floors. The gardens outside were pristine, with neatly trimmed hedges and colorful flowers that smelled faintly of roses and lilies. Inside, everything gleamed, the furniture polished to perfection, the floor spotless, and not a single item out of place. The billionaire was already deep into his work, seated at a large desk with a sleek laptop open in front of him. Papers scattered around, phone ringing almost constantly. Calls came and went, deals were discussed, and messages flew across screens. For him, it was just another ordinary day. In contrast, the maid's morning was calm, quiet, and methodical. She moved through the mansion like a gentle breeze, going from room to room, dusting surfaces, rearranging cushions, and folding linens with care. She had been working in the mansion for several months now, and she knew the routines of the place well. She knew where everything belonged, how the billionaire liked his morning coffee, and even which flowers in the garden bloomed at what time. Her life was simple, but meaningful. Though she earned little, she took pride in her work, and there was a quiet dignity in the way she performed every task as she finished arranging the breakfast table. She glanced out of the window and noticed the dog in the garden. It was a large, strong dog, one that was trained to guard the property. The dog belonged to the billionaire and was known to be protective, even aggressive at times. She had seen it snap at delivery men, chase the neighbors' cats, and bark fiercely at anyone unfamiliar to the household. But today, the dog seemed restless. Its ears were perked, its tail stiff, and it paced back and forth near the garden gate. The maid paused for a moment, frowning. Something felt off. She returned to her work, but she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. As she walked across the living room to polish the silverware, she heard a sudden bark, then another, louder and sharper. Her heart skipped a beat. She rushed to the window and saw the dog running, not at the gate this time, but toward the path that led to the back of the house. The maid's eyes widened. That path was where she usually swept the leaves, and right now, she was about to cross it. Without thinking, she moved faster, grabbing a small dustpan and broom that she had left nearby. Her instincts kicked in. She knew the dog could be dangerous, but she also knew that panic would make things worse. She had to remain calm, stay steady, and think clearly. As she stepped onto the path, the dog's growl grew louder. The sound was low, deep, and threatening, echoing through the garden. Its body was tense, muscles rippling under its fur, eyes fixed on her. The maid froze for a brief second, feeling the rush of fear. She had faced challenges before in life, but nothing quite like this. She reminded herself that fear could not control her. She had learned early in life that staying calm was sometimes the only way to survive a dangerous moment. She raised her broom slightly, not as a weapon, but as a shield, something to put between herself and the charging dog. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady, soft, and calm. "Easy, boy, easy," she murmured, trying to make her tone gentle but firm. The dog hesitated slightly, confused by the unexpected calmness. The billionaire, alerted by the commotion, had stepped out onto the balcony overlooking the garden. He froze as he saw the dog moving fast toward the maid. He opened his mouth to shout, but no words came out. He had seen many employees at his mansion, some timid, some confident, but none had ever faced danger like this. The dog's powerful frame was charging, and the maid was standing her ground. Time seemed to stretch. Every second felt longer, heavier. The sunlight glinted off the broom, the shadows of the trees danced across the ground, and the air was thick with tension. The maid took a slow, careful step backward, keeping her eyes on the dog. She didn't run. She knew running might trigger the dog's chase instinct. Instead, she moved deliberately, guiding the dog away from the house. Her hand held the broom steady, her stance balanced. She spoke again, softer this time. "It's okay. Calm down." Her voice was calm, but underneath it was an inner strength she didn't know she had. The dog growled again, then stopped for a fraction of a second, tilting its head. The maid saw this and knew that the animal was trying to decide what to do. She took another slow step, careful not to provoke it. Her heart pounded, but her mind was clear. She remembered that the dog had a favorite command it obeyed sometimes. Sit. She whispered it, unsure if it would work. The dog paused, ears twitching, its growl softer. The billionaire watched, still on the balcony, unable to believe what he was seeing. This was not a scene from his usual life of boardrooms and business deals. This was raw, immediate human courage. He had never seen such calm in the face of imminent danger. Most people would have screamed, run, or frozen completely. But this maid. She stood there, small and seemingly ordinary, yet radiating a quiet confidence that commanded the dog's attention. Suddenly, the dog lunged once more, faster than before. The maid raised the broom higher, stepping forward slightly, using the broom not to strike but to create a barrier. She moved with precision, almost like she had practiced this exact moment in her mind. The dog stopped again, sniffed the air, and hesitated. The tension was almost unbearable. She could feel her pulse racing, her hands shaking just slightly, but her mind was sharper than ever. Every instinct, every experience, every ounce of attention she had was focused entirely on the dog. For a moment it felt as if time itself had stopped. The garden was quiet except for the dog's heavy breathing and the rustling of leaves in the wind. She took another careful step, guiding the dog slowly back toward the far side of the garden. Her voice remained calm, her gestures measured. She had no idea if she could completely control the dog, but she knew she could keep herself safe for the moment. The billionaire finally found his voice and shouted from the balcony, "Step back!" But the maid didn't flinch. She knew that any sudden movement could make things worse. Instead, she responded with a steady command, speaking softly, "It's all right." Calm, easy. Her words, surprisingly, seemed to have an effect. The dog's growl faded slightly, replaced with low, curious whines. It was testing, trying to understand the strange confidence radiating from her. Other staff had begun to gather at the edges of the garden, watching in silent awe. None of them dared to intervene, afraid of angering the powerful animal. They whispered among themselves, astonished that one person could hold such control in a moment when fear could have easily taken over. The maid, however, was fully focused. Her body was tense, ready to react if necessary, but her mind was calm, calculating, and centered. She had faced challenges in life that had taught her patience and courage, and now those lessons were being tested in the most immediate way possible as she slowly guided the dog toward the far corner of the garden. She noticed a small opening in the fenced area where the dog sometimes escaped during training sessions. She realized that if she could move the animal in that direction, she might be able to contain it safely. Carefully, deliberately, she adjusted her path, moving slowly, guiding the dog's steps. The dog hesitated once more, then followed her lead, responding to her calm authority rather than force. The billionaire leaned on the balcony rail, astonished. He had seen brave people in his life, courageous people, who took risks for money, for fame, for causes. But this was different. This was ordinary courage, raw and unpolished, not seeking reward, not showing off. It was instinctive, human, and genuine. He realized that he had underestimated the quiet strength of the people around him, assuming that wealth or position made a person important, when in truth, courage and presence of mind mattered far more. The tension in the garden slowly began to fade. The dog, still alert but calmer now, sniffed around the corner, finally moving toward the safe side of the fence. The maid kept her broom in place until she was sure the animal was no longer a threat. Her breathing was steadying, though her heart still raced from the adrenaline. She had faced danger head-on, without hesitation, and had succeeded in controlling a situation that could have turned disastrous. For a moment, she simply stood there, taking in the quiet, feeling the relief wash over her. She knew that she had acted well, not out of bravado, but because it was the right thing to do. She had trusted herself, stayed calm, and relied on her instincts, and it had worked. The billionaire finally descended the stairs, moving quickly toward her. His face was a mixture of amazement and gratitude. He reached out, almost in disbelief, and said that was incredible. You kept your head. You didn't panic. The maid smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I just tried to stay calm," she said softly. "I didn't want anyone to get hurt." In that moment, the ordinary maid had become extraordinary, not because of wealth, status, or recognition, but because she had faced danger and met it with courage, calm, and human presence. The morning that had begun like any other had transformed into something unforgettable, a memory that would linger in the hearts of everyone who witnessed it. The house gradually settled back into its usual rhythm after the morning incident. But the air was still thick with tension. The maid returned to her chores, her movements calm, but her mind was alert, replaying every second of what had just happened. She kept glancing toward the garden, ensuring the dog was safe and calm. Even though the immediate danger had passed, a part of her could not shake the feeling that things might not be completely over. She had learned long ago that danger often came in unexpected ways, and preparedness was always necessary. The billionaire, meanwhile, could not focus on his work. His office, usually a place of concentration, felt strangely quiet without the familiar sound of papers shuffling and phones ringing. He kept replaying the scene in his mind, the way the maid had stood firm, her calm voice and steady hands controlling the dog. Every time he thought about it, he felt a mix of awe and guilt. He realized he had been lucky that someone like her was there, someone who could act decisively in a dangerous moment. Later that afternoon, he called for a brief meeting with his staff. The servants gathered in the main hall, a mixture of curiosity and anxiety on their faces. No one could stop talking quietly about what had happened. The billionaire's voice was firm, but calm as he addressed them. "I want everyone to understand something," he began. "What you witnessed today was courage. Not all courage comes from training or power. Sometimes it comes from ordinary people doing extraordinary things when they need to." He paused, his eyes sweeping over the staff. "I want to specifically acknowledge the person who acted today." She did not hesitate. She stayed calm and protected everyone. That is true bravery. The maid, standing quietly at the back, felt her cheeks warm with a mix of embarrassment and pride. She had not acted to be noticed. She had acted because it was necessary. Praise was never something she sought. But hearing those words from someone so powerful made her realize the weight of her actions. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel proud, even if quietly. After the meeting, life in the mansion slowly returned to routine. The billionaire resumed his work, but he could not help observing the maid more closely. He noticed the way she moved with quiet efficiency, the care with which she handled every task, and the subtle attention she paid to the smallest details. He realized that her courage was just one part of her character. Her strength, patience, and observation made her truly remarkable. That evening, the billionaire decided to walk through the garden himself. The dog, now calm but alert, followed him at a distance. The maid had already finished tidying the outdoor furniture and was checking the flower beds one last time. Seeing the billionaire approach, she instinctively straightened, her hands brushing soil off her gloves. He stopped a few feet away, studying her quietly. "You were incredible today," he said finally. "I have never seen anyone react like that. Most people would have panicked, but you..." He shook his head, unable to finish the thought. "You stood your ground. You faced the danger calmly. I need to know. How did you do it?" The maid looked at him, considering how to answer. She did not want to seem boastful, but she also knew honesty was important. "I didn't think," she said simply. "I just reacted. I've had to stay calm in difficult situations before. I guess I just did what felt right in the moment." The billionaire nodded slowly, impressed. "It is rare to find someone who can react like that without fear taking over. You have a presence of mind that is remarkable. I want you to understand that today you saved not just yourself, but the entire household from potential harm." The maid smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I was just doing my job," she said, almost automatically. But inside she felt a quiet satisfaction. She had done more than her job. She had acted decisively when it mattered most. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the garden, the billionaire noticed something else. He realized that he had often underestimated people around him, assuming their value based on appearances or positions. But the maid had proven something far more important: true strength. Courage and quick thinking could come from anyone, regardless of their role or status. He felt a sudden respect that went deeper than words could express. That night, after the staff had retired and the mansion grew quiet, the maid sat in the small room she used for breaks. She reflected on the day's events, thinking about how quickly things had escalated and how her instincts had guided her through the chaos. She realized that fear was a natural response, but courage was choosing to act despite that fear. She had acted not for recognition or reward, but because it was the right thing to do, and in that moment, that was enough. Meanwhile, the billionaire could not stop thinking about the maid's actions. He went over the incident repeatedly, analyzing what had happened and how she had handled it. He considered the possibility that not everyone would have acted the same way, and he felt a deep sense of gratitude that she was part of his household. For him, it was a lesson in humility, in recognizing that courage and intelligence were not always tied to wealth or education, but often found in the most unassuming individuals. The following days were filled with a quiet tension. The dog, though calm, remained under closer watch. The maid continued her daily routine, moving through the mansion with her usual efficiency, but now with a subtle change. Staff members looked at her differently, not with surprise, but with a newfound respect. They whispered among themselves about her bravery, sharing stories of how she had faced danger with courage and composure. She never boasted or spoke much about the incident, but the quiet acknowledgement from everyone around her reminded her that actions often spoke louder than words. One afternoon, the billionaire called her into his office. She entered, carrying herself with the same poise she always had, though her heart beat a little faster. He gestured for her to sit. "I've been thinking about what happened," he began. "I want you to know that your actions didn't just protect me and the staff. They changed how I see people. You have shown me that bravery isn't about power or status. It's about presence of mind and heart." The maid nodded quietly, listening. She did not seek praise, but she understood the significance of his words. "Thank you," she said simply. "I just did what I felt was right." The billionaire leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You've earned a place of respect here, more than I can express. I want everyone in this household to understand that courage and calmness can come from the most unexpected places. Your example will be remembered." The maid returned to her duties after the meeting, feeling a quiet sense of purpose. She realized that bravery was not always about grand gestures or public recognition. Sometimes it was about standing firm in small, intense moments, about trusting your instincts, and acting when others might hesitate. The day had taught her more than just how to handle a dangerous animal. It had reinforced her understanding of herself, her strengths, and her values. Over the next few weeks, life slowly returned to a sense of normalcy. The dog was calmer, staff routines resumed, and the mansion functioned as it always had. But beneath the surface, things had changed. The billionaire now watched the maid with a different kind of attention, not intrusive, but observant, recognizing her value in ways he had never considered before. He often reflected on the incident, thinking about courage, humility, and the quiet strength that could exist in anyone. Regardless of their station, the maid continued her work with the same dedication. But now, with a deeper awareness of her own abilities, she understood that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when faced with challenges. Her calmness in the face of danger had not only prevented harm, but it also left a lasting impression on those around her. One evening, as she closed the blinds in the sitting room, she caught a glimpse of the billionaire watching her from his office window. He nodded slightly, a silent acknowledgement of what she had done. It was a small gesture, but it carried weight. In that moment, both of them understood something profound. Courage and respect could exist in quiet, unspoken ways, leaving an impact far greater than words ever could. And so, the mansion settled into a new rhythm. The events of that day became a quiet legend among the staff. They told each other about the maid who had faced the dog with calm courage, whose presence of mind had prevented what could have been a disaster. The billionaire never forgot her actions, often reflecting on them in moments of quiet thought, realizing that bravery and human strength were more valuable than wealth, more inspiring than power, and far more memorable than anything else in life. The maid herself never sought recognition. She went about her work, focused, attentive, and quietly proud. But deep down, she knew something had shifted. She had discovered a new layer of herself, a courage she had not fully recognized before, and in doing so, had taught everyone around her an unforgettable lesson about bravery, calmness, and the quiet power of human instinct. The days after the dog incident passed with a quiet tension that the mansion could never quite shake off. The staff had returned to their routines, but there was an unspoken awareness of what had happened. Everyone moved a little more cautiously around the garden, keeping an eye on the dog that had once threatened them. Even the billionaire, who had returned to his business calls and meetings, often paused to glance out of the window, thinking about the maid and her courage. For the maid, however, the calm was only temporary. She could sense that the dog, though quieter than before, was not completely settled. Its behavior was unpredictable, and she knew from experience that animals could act on impulse, especially when they felt restless or threatened. She spent extra time in the garden, checking for anything that might trigger the dog's aggression, adjusting the fencing, and making sure there was no opportunity for it to run freely. She moved with a careful attention, her mind alert, ready to act if necessary. One afternoon, as the sun shone brightly over the mansion, she noticed the dog pacing near the fountain. Its eyes followed her as she approached, muscles tense, tail stiff. She froze for a second, studying it. The dog had calmed since the first incident, but its behavior was cautious and calculating. It was as if it remembered the confrontation and was testing her, trying to gauge her reaction. The maid took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay calm. She had handled it before, and she could handle it again. She moved slowly toward the dog, speaking in the soft, steady voice that had worked before. "Easy. It's okay," she said, extending a hand slightly, showing no fear. The dog growled, low in its throat, stepping forward with a cautious hesitation. It was clear that it was assessing her, trying to decide whether she was a threat or someone to be respected. The maid's heart beat faster, but her movements remained deliberate and controlled. She had learned that animals, like people, responded to confidence and calmness. Fear only made situations worse. The billionaire, noticing the gathering tension from his office window, stepped outside. He had decided to observe from a safe distance, curious to see how the maid would manage the situation this time. He had seen her bravery before, but each encounter with the dog revealed a new layer of her strength and composure. He watched silently as she navigated the delicate moment, speaking gently, her hands moving carefully to create space and boundaries without aggression. The dog suddenly lunged slightly, testing her resolve. The maid froze, holding her ground, broom held firmly in front of her as a barrier. Her mind raced, thinking about how to defuse the situation. She remembered that animals often responded to calm persistence rather than sudden movements. She adjusted her stance slightly, lowering herself to appear less threatening, and repeated her soft commands. "Easy, calm, it's okay." Her tone was unwavering, controlled, and patient. For a tense moment, nothing happened. The dog's muscles tensed, its eyes locked on her. Then, almost imperceptibly, it stepped back. The maid saw the movement and carefully advanced a step, keeping her tone soft but firm. She was not trying to dominate the dog. She was guiding it, showing that she could be trusted. Each movement required complete focus, balancing caution with assertiveness. She felt the adrenaline pumping through her veins, but she did not let it control her actions. The billionaire, still watching, felt a mixture of relief and awe. He realized that the maid's courage was not just physical bravery, it was intelligence, patience, and empathy combined. She understood the dog's behavior in a way that no one else had, responding to its instincts without letting fear take over. He had encountered countless high-stakes situations in his life, yet nothing had required the kind of calm, measured action that she displayed. As the minutes passed, the tension in the garden slowly eased. The dog stopped pacing and sat down near the fountain, still alert but no longer threatening. The maid lowered her broom, moving a few steps back to give the animal space. She spoke gently, praising the dog's calmness. "Good, that's right. Calm." Her words were soft, human, and patient. The dog seemed to relax slightly, its ears tilting as if acknowledging her authority without fear. The billionaire approached carefully, not wanting to startle the dog. "I can't believe how calm you are with it," he said quietly, almost in awe. Most people would have run or screamed. The maid looked at him and smiled faintly. "I've learned that fear only makes things worse," she said. "You can't control the situation if panic takes over. Calmness gives you a chance to guide it safely." That evening, as the sun began to set, the mansion took on a quiet, reflective atmosphere. The staff moved through their chores with a heightened sense of awareness, still impressed by what they had witnessed. The maid continued her work, but her thoughts kept returning to the dog and the day's events. She understood that courage was not a single act, but a series of choices made under pressure. Every decision she had taken, every step she had made, required focus, patience, and trust in herself. Late that night, after the household had settled and the mansion grew silent, the maid reflected on her experiences. She thought about how quickly situations could escalate, how danger could appear unexpectedly, and how critical it was to remain calm and observant. Her actions with the dog had been instinctive, yet they revealed something deeper about her character and natural courage, sense of responsibility, and a presence of mind that could navigate even the most tense moments. The billionaire in his office was also reflecting. He realized that he had often taken people for granted, judging them by appearances or social roles. But the maid had shown him that true strength was not about status, wealth, or education. It was about courage, intelligence, and heart. He began to think about how he interacted with people in his life, recognizing that he had overlooked the quiet, steady individuals who could act decisively when it mattered most. The next morning, the mansion resumed its routine, but with subtle changes. The dog was still under watch, and the staff moved with careful attention. The maid, as always, went about her work quietly, but she felt a growing confidence. She understood that her actions had meaning beyond the immediate moment. They demonstrated that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when faced with challenges, that calmness and courage could influence outcomes far beyond their own expectations. One afternoon, the billionaire invited her to walk through the garden with him. The dog followed at a distance, calm but alert. He spoke quietly, wanting to understand her perspective. "You handled that dog better than anyone I've ever seen," he said. "It's remarkable how you stayed calm even when it was aggressive. How did you manage it?" The maid thought for a moment. "I try to observe first," she said, "to understand what the animal or person is feeling. Acting too quickly or out of fear often makes things worse. Calmness gives you control, but control with understanding, not force." The billionaire nodded, impressed by her insight. He realized that her approach to the dog reflected a larger wisdom and ability to assess situations calmly, to respond with thought rather than instinct alone, and to act with empathy. It was a lesson he had never expected to learn from someone in her position. As they walked, the maid continued to talk quietly about the dog's behavior, explaining small details about its body language, its reactions, and how patience could influence outcomes. The billionaire listened attentively, absorbing each word. He understood that courage was not just physical strength, but also intelligence, observation, and presence of mind. The maid embodied all these qualities. Her actions had left a lasting impression on him. That evening, the mansion was calm, but the memory of the earlier events lingered in every room. The staff spoke quietly about the maid's bravery, telling stories of her calm actions and presence of mind. She never sought recognition, but the respect she earned was genuine and lasting. Even the billionaire, who had seen the world at its most demanding, often reflected on her actions, realizing that they had taught him something important about courage, humanity, and the quiet power of steady resolve. The days continued, and the dog grew more accustomed to the maid's presence. It still displayed moments of restlessness, but it no longer acted aggressively. The maid maintained her calm approach, reinforcing trust and understanding. Every Interaction became a small lesson in patience, courage, and careful attention. The billionaire observed these moments, often from a distance, appreciating not only her bravery, but her intelligence and intuition. The maid's confidence grew, not because she had been praised, but because she understood the impact of her calm, deliberate actions. She knew that courage was not always about grand gestures or recognition. It was about doing what was right in critical moments, acting thoughtfully, and staying composed when others might panic. Her experiences with the dog had reinforced this lesson, deepening her understanding of herself and her capabilities. And so, the mansion settled into a new rhythm. The dog, once a source of tension and fear, became a symbol of trust and respect. The maid's actions continued to influence the household, reminding everyone that bravery could emerge from quiet. Ordinary people, and that calmness in the face of danger, often made the difference between chaos and safety. The billionaire, reflecting on these events, realized that courage and presence of mind were qualities he had often overlooked. He understood that the maid's bravery was not just about handling a dog, it was about facing challenges with intelligence, patience, and empathy. And in that realization, he found a new respect for the quiet, steady individuals who could act decisively when the moment demanded it. The maid, meanwhile, continued her work with dedication, aware that her actions had created a lasting impact. She had faced danger, remained calm, and demonstrated courage in a way that inspired everyone around her. Her story, though simple, was powerful, a reminder that ordinary people could achieve extraordinary things through steady resolve, careful observation, and a calm, courageous heart. The following morning began quietly. The mansion bathed in soft golden light. The staff moved about their routines, and the dog, now calmer than before, lounged near the garden fountain. But the maid sensed that something was different today. There was a tension in the air that she could not quite place, even though the dog had grown accustomed to her presence. She understood that animals could sense moods and changes, and sometimes, even the calmest creatures could react unpredictably. She moved with extra care as she walked through the garden, arranging tools and checking the flower beds. Each step was deliberate, her eyes scanning the surroundings for anything that might startle the dog. Her senses were heightened, and her mind replayed lessons from past experiences. Calmness, patience, observations, these were her tools. She did not underestimate the dog, even though it had behaved well in recent days. She knew that true courage came from respect, not from ignoring potential danger. The billionaire, meanwhile, had decided to spend more time in the garden that morning. After watching the maid handle the dog with such poise, they'd grown curious about how she managed these situations and wanted to understand more. He stepped lightly across the paths, keeping a respectful distance, observing how she moved, how she spoke, and how the dog reacted. Every subtle action the maid took seemed to reinforce the quiet authority she held over the situation. As the maid approached the far end of the garden, she noticed the dog's ears prick up. It was pacing, eyes flicking toward the hedge. She stopped immediately, sensing the animal's unease. Something beyond her previous observations had caught its attention. She squinted, scanning the hedge herself, and noticed movement. A small stray animal had wandered close to the property. The dog's protective instincts were triggered. Its growl was low and warning, signaling its readiness to defend. The maid's heart quickened, but she did not panic. She stepped slowly forward, keeping her movements measured and her voice calm. "Easy. It's okay. Stay calm," she said softly, extending a hand slightly. The dog's muscles tensed, and it took a few steps forward, growling. She knew she needed to redirect its focus before the situation escalated. She took a few deep breaths, reminding herself that animals often responded better to guidance than confrontation. The stray animal darted out suddenly, and the dog's reaction was instant. It bolted toward the hedge, barking loudly. The maid acted immediately, stepping between the dog and the open gate, broom held firmly. Her movements were precise, her voice steady. "Stop. Easy. Calm," she commanded. Her tone was firm but gentle, communicating control without aggression. The dog hesitated for a fraction of a second, then skidded to a halt. Confused by her calm authority, the billionaire, observing from a safe distance, could not hide his amazement. He had seen many brave people, but none who could command such control without raising a hand in anger. He realized that what she possessed was not just courage, but a deep understanding of instincts, patience, and presence of mind. Most people would have panicked, but she remained steady, even when the dog reacted to an unexpected stimulus. The maid slowly backed away, guiding the dog away from the gate and toward the center of the garden. Her eyes never left the animal, and her hands moved subtly to maintain a sense of space and authority. She knew that if she lost composure even for a moment, the situation could spiral out of control. She focused on her breathing, keeping her movements calm and deliberate, communicating confidence through every step. The stray animal, sensing the dog's hesitation, ran away from the property. The dog barked once more, then turned toward the maid, panting but now calmer. She lowered her broom slowly, speaking softly. "Good, calm now. Safe." The dog tilted its head, observing her as if acknowledging her authority without aggression. She stepped back further, allowing its space to relax completely. The billionaire approached carefully, his footsteps light on the garden path. "I don't know how you do it," he said quietly, almost in awe. "Most people would have run or screamed. But you stayed calm even when it reacted. I've never seen anything like it." The maid smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I just observe first," she said softly. "Reacting too quickly makes things worse. Calmness gives control, but control with understanding, not force." He nodded, impressed. "It's more than bravery. It's intelligence, patience, and presence. You understand more than just the animal. You understand the situation, the environment, and yourself. That's rare." The maid glanced at him, a quiet sense of pride mixed with humility in her eyes. She had never sought recognition, but hearing these words from someone so powerful made her understand the true weight of her actions. The day continued, but the sense of tension in the mansion lingered. Staff moved through their tasks with caution, aware that they had witnessed something extraordinary. They spoke quietly among themselves, sharing stories of the maid's calm actions and her ability to navigate danger without panic. Though she never sought praise, her presence had changed the dynamic of the household. Everyone who observed her knew that courage was not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was quiet, steady, and deliberate. Later that afternoon, the billionaire called the maid to his office. He wanted to discuss not only her actions with the dog, but also her approach to challenges. "I've been thinking," he began, "about how you handle situations. It's more than courage, it's understanding. You assess, observe, and act with calm authority. That's something I've rarely seen, even in highly trained professionals." The maid nodded quietly, listening. She understood the compliment, but remained modest. "I've learned that acting impulsively often makes things worse," she said. "Staying calm and observing first gives you a chance to guide the situation safely. It works for animals, people, and life in general." The billionaire leaned back in his chair, reflecting. "It's remarkable that someone in your position can teach a lesson about courage and calmness to someone like me. Most people judge based on appearances or status, but you've shown me that true strength comes from presence of mind, patience, and empathy." The maid smiled faintly, feeling a quiet sense of satisfaction. She had not acted for recognition, but she understood that her calm approach had left a lasting impression. She had demonstrated that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when faced with challenges, and that true courage often came in quiet, measured ways rather than dramatic gestures. That evening, the mansion settled into its familiar rhythm. The dog rested near the fountain, calm and watchful, and the staff moved through their routines with a renewed sense of respect for the maid. She continued her work quietly, but a subtle confidence had taken root within her. She knew that her actions had created a lasting impact, not only on the dog and the household, but also on the billionaire himself. As night fell, she sat in her small room reflecting on the day. She thought about the moments of tension, the split-second decisions, and the calm presence that had guided her through it all. Courage, she realized, was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Each choice she had made had been deliberate, informed by observation, patience, and understanding. She had faced the unknown and emerged with a sense of control and confidence. The billionaire. Right. In his office, also reflected on the day's events. He realized that he had often overlooked the quiet, steady individuals around him, assuming that appearances or roles defined their value. But the maid had proven that courage and intelligence could exist in anyone, regardless of status or position. He understood that her actions were not just about handling a dog, they were about presence of mind, empathy, and human strength. Over the next few days, life in the mansion resumed its usual pattern, but with subtle differences. The staff treated the maid with a quiet respect, aware that she had faced danger and remained composed. The billionaire observed her more attentively, appreciating not only her courage but her intelligence, patience, and understanding of the world around her. Each interaction with the dog became a demonstration of calm, authority, and trust, reinforcing the lessons she had already taught. One afternoon, as she walked through the garden, she noticed the dog following her at a careful distance. Its movements were relaxed, and it responded to her subtle commands without hesitation. She spoke softly, praising its calmness. Good. Easy. Safe. The animal tilted its head, acknowledging her authority without fear. She realized that trust and patience had transformed what was once a threat into a respectful companion. And the lesson applied to more than just animals, it applied to people, situations, and life itself. The billionaire watched from a nearby window. Impressed by the quiet mastery she displayed, he reflected on how her calm presence had changed the atmosphere of the mansion, creating an environment where fear could be managed, and challenges could be met with intelligence and patience. He understood that bravery was not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was quiet, steady, and deeply human. As the sun set, the mansion glowed in the fading light, peaceful yet alive with the lessons of courage and calm. The maid returned to her duties, aware that her actions had left a lasting impression on everyone around her. She had faced danger, acted with presence of mind, and inspired respect through quiet, deliberate choices. Her story was one of courage, patience, and human strength, a story that would be remembered long after the events themselves had passed. The mansion was quieter than usual that morning. Sunlight spilled across the marble floors, highlighting the patterns of the garden outside. The dog, now calm and attentive, lay near the fountain, its eyes occasionally flicking toward the maid as she moved about her chores. The air carried a subtle sense of peace, but underneath it, the household remained. Aware that courage had changed the balance in small but meaningful ways, the maid began her day as always, walking from room to room, tidying, dusting, and arranging flowers. But today, there was a sense of ease in her movements, a quiet confidence that had grown over the weeks since the dog incident. She no longer approached her duties with just routine in mind. She carried with her a deeper awareness of her own strength and presence. It was not arrogance. It's only the steady certainty that she could meet challenges with calm and courage. The billionaire, observing from his office, noted this change as well. He had often seen capable staff before, but none had left such a lasting impression on him. It was not just her ability to control the dog or handle unexpected danger, it was her composure, patience, and humility that struck him most. He realized that her quiet courage had taught him more about human strength than anything he had learned in boardrooms or business meetings. Later that morning, the maid approached the garden. She noticed that the dog had gotten up and was following her slowly. Its eyes were alert yet calm, and it responded to her subtle gestures without hesitation. She smiled faintly, extending a hand toward it. "Good, stay calm," she said softly. The dog sat down obediently, its tail wagging lightly. The sight brought a quiet warmth to her chest. She understood that trust and patience could transform fear into respect, tension into cooperation. The billionaire stepped outside, watching her from a short distance. He had decided to spend some time in the garden to witness her interactions again. He saw not just her bravery, but the way she connected with the dog, the way she communicated confidence and calm without aggression. It was a lesson in human and animal behavior, in presence and perception, in leadership without dominance. "You've done more than manage the dog," he said quietly when he approached. "You've taught everyone here something important about courage, patience, and understanding. I've never seen such a quiet strength." The maid looked at him, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I only did what was necessary," she said simply. "Sometimes that's all courage is, acting when you need to, staying calm and thinking clearly. That's what anyone can do if they trust themselves." He nodded slowly, impressed by her humility. "You make it sound simple, but what you did was remarkable. Most people would have panicked or hesitated. You didn't. You stayed calm and controlled the situation. It's not just bravery, it's intelligence, intuition, and patience combined. That's rare." The maid smiled quietly, feeling a sense of satisfaction that was not tied to praise. She had faced danger, acted decisively, and emerged with confidence, but her goal had never been recognition. Her pride came from knowing that she had handled the situation correctly and safely. She had proven to herself what she was capable of, and in doing so, she had earned the respect of everyone around her in the following days. The mansion's routine continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. Staff moved with a heightened sense of awareness, treating each other and the dog with more care and respect. They often whispered stories of the maid's bravery, recounting how she had faced the dog with calm determination and quick thinking. Even those who had been skeptical at first began to see the wisdom in her approach. Patience, observation, and composure could resolve problems far more effectively than fear or rash action. The billionaire, reflecting on the events, felt a deep sense of gratitude. He realized that bravery was not always obvious or loud. Sometimes it was quiet, measured, and deeply human. It was found in those who acted without seeking attention, who trusted their instincts and stayed calm under pressure. The maid had shown him a lesson that could not be taught in schools, lectures, or seminars. It was a lesson in humility, courage, and the power of human presence. One afternoon, he asked the maid to walk with him through the gardens again. The dog followed at a calm distance, responding to her soft commands without issue. "I've been thinking about what you've taught me," he said as they walked. "It's more than just managing a dangerous animal. It's about understanding people, life, and yourself. You've shown me that courage is not about power or status. It's about calm, thought, and heart. That's something I'll never forget." The maid listened quietly, feeling a subtle warmth in her chest. She had never imagined that her simple actions, staying calm, guiding the dog, and trusting her instincts, could have such a profound effect. Her courage had not only prevented harm, but had inspired respect, reflection, and understanding. She realized that her story was not just about bravery. It was about human connection, trust, and the quiet power of steady resolve. Over the next few weeks, the mansion settled into a comfortable rhythm. The dog was calmer than ever. Staff moved efficiently and attentively, and the billionaire continued to observe the maid with admiration. He saw how her calm presence influenced not just the dog, but the entire household. Her actions had created a ripple effect, teaching patience, courage, and thoughtful action to everyone who witnessed her. One evening, the maid paused near the fountain, watching the sun reflect on the water. The dog lay nearby, calm and attentive. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the moments of tension, and split-second decisions that had tested her courage. She realized that bravery was not a single act, but a series of choices, each one demanding awareness, calmness, and trust in herself. She had faced danger, managed it with skill and presence, and emerged stronger and more confident than before. The billionaire, noticing her reflection in the water, approached quietly. "You've done more than I can express," he said softly. "You've changed the way I think about courage, strength, and human potential. Your actions have left a lasting mark on this household and on me personally. I'll never forget what you've taught us." The maid looked at him, her expression calm and composed. "I didn't do it to teach or impress anyone," she said. "I did it because it was necessary. But if my actions have made a difference, then I'm glad. That's all anyone can hope for, making a positive impact when it matters. The billionaire nodded, understanding the quiet wisdom in her words. He realized that true courage was not about recognition, applause, or reward. It was about acting with presence, patience, and care in the moments that counted most. The maid had demonstrated this in the simplest and most profound way, leaving an impression that would last far longer than the events themselves. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the garden, the mansion glowed in a golden light. The dog lay quietly, the staff moved through their routines. The billionaire reflected on the extraordinary human strength he had witnessed. The maid returned to her duties with quiet determination, aware that her actions had not only protected the household, but had also inspired respect, reflection, and admiration. Her bravery had proven that ordinary people could achieve extraordinary things. It had shown that calmness, patience, and thoughtful action were more powerful than fear or impulsive decisions. And it had reminded everyone around her that courage often exists in the quietest, most unassuming individuals, waiting to be revealed in moments of need. The days that followed were peaceful, yet the lessons of bravery remained alive. The billionaire often thought about the maid, reflecting on her courage and calm and how it had transformed his perspective. The staff spoke quietly of her composure, sharing stories of the day the dog charged and the way she had handled it with skill and grace. Her presence had become a symbol of calm strength and human resilience, reminding everyone that courage was not defined by wealth, position, or appearance, but by the quiet ability to act with confidence and care in critical moments. And so, life in the mansion continued, forever changed by one extraordinary day. The maid, though never seeking recognition, had demonstrated the power of courage, calm, and human intelligence. She had faced fear, protected those around her, and left a lasting impact on everyone she encountered. Her story became a quiet legend, a testament to the strength of ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. The billionaire often reflected on her actions, thinking about the lessons she had taught him. He realized that wealth and power were not measures of true strength. Courage, patience, empathy, and calm presence mattered far more. And in the quiet moments of his day, he would often recall the way she had stood firm, guided the dog, and remained composed when others might have panicked. It was a lesson he would carry with him forever. The maid herself returned to her work with a quiet smile. She had faced danger, acted with clarity and calm, and emerged with confidence.